All right, one of you students asked this question. In life group, we had a long conversation about this. Should we tithe 10% off our income pre-tax or post-tax? It's a good question. Now, essentially, what this student is asking is, say you get a paycheck from McDonald's, okay, at the end of the month. That paycheck does not technically represent the full amount that you got paid. It represents the, say, 80 to 90% that you get to take home, that you get after taxes are taken out and given to the government, because Uncle Sam needs his cut. All right. So the question is, do we tithe? Do we give to the church and give back to God based on what we get, or the full amount in which we earned? Now, this is the question that I would ask in return. Who should we give to first and foremost? The authority figure, God, in our life, or the authority figure that God has given us, the government? Who should we give to first? Like, that's actually really what this question is asking. And for me, knowing that all the money that I have is ultimately God's money, and all the money that government has is ultimately God's money, I would say, and the way I think of this is that God, being the highest authority in my life, the one that I'm first and foremost subject to, is the one that I'm going to give to first, because all of it is ultimately His, that He has allowed me to earn, and that I want to use in full, so pre-tax, in full, to cultivate generosity in my life. So Emily and I, when we get our paychecks, we don't just, again, go to give based off what that number shows. We actually go back and look at what is called the gross number. That is the number you want to look for, is the gross income. That's how much you actually made before the government took their cut. And that is the number that we will give back to God and ultimately to His kingdom. Another question I would ask you to consider, if this is, say, you and you're in high school and you're working and you're trying to figure out this whole tithing and giving thing, I would encourage you to consider the ways in which you can be abundantly generous, right? That's ultimately actually what Jesus calls us to. You will actually find nowhere in Scripture that commands you to give 10%. Go look it up for yourself. But Jesus calls us to abundant generosity. And for me, man, why wouldn't I give pre-tax if it's an opportunity to cultivate greater generosity in my heart and in my life, ultimately becoming more like Jesus and reflecting Him in this world? And so I would encourage you to give pre-tax.